Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Wild Sundry Farms. My name is Grayson, and it is a very, very warm, nice day today here in southeastern Alabama. In some places, it is not, still cold, still trying to get into spring, but here, today, like, the high's like 70. I don't know the exact, high for today, but it's around 70 degrees, and it is just very nice out here, and I've just been doing other things, but today I kind of want to talk a little bit about feeding, and spring feeding, transitioning from winter to spring, and how you're going to transition with your feeding. Because whenever you're in winter, you're probably going to be feeding candy bars or some kind of sugar bricks or something that's kind of hard candy for the bees. That's what you're usually going to be feeding during winter. That's what sometimes I'll do. Fondant, whatever you do, something like that. And you're probably wondering when, how, and when should I transition into one-to-one sugar water, pollen patties too. Sometimes beekeepers will use pollen patties. And I also do want to give a couple tips for spring feeding, so let's go and get into it. Now, this is going to be my opinion-based thing, and a lot of times I will clarify that a lot of times whenever you're talking about when you should do it, it really depends on where you're located. It's really a location matter. It really depends on where you are, if you're north, down south, because right now we're warm weather. We had a cold snap in Monday and Tuesday. So whenever, I'll probably start here, if you are warm temperatures like me, you're going warm, you got to be ready for the cold snap. You got to be ready for any cold snaps in March, because I knew it was going to happen one day, folks. I just knew it. And it happened. So what you got to do is you got to make sure you're ready. Be prepared for anything. So make up a plan that you're going to do. My plan was, if that happens, at the time I had one-to-one sugar water on. I took that one-to-one sugar water off, put some fondant on just in case, to ensure that my bees have enough food, or I'd be up all night worrying about my bees, like most everybody would. So what I did was I did take off the one-to-one sugar water, set it aside, so I'll probably put it back on today or tomorrow, since it's going to be warm. No more cold weather for the next at least couple weeks from what I can see on the weather app. That's just what it says. But just make sure you have yourself a plan. I took it off, and I put some fondant on. I just made up some quick fondant, put it on, and they're eating it right now. I'm sure it's still on right now. I'm just letting them finish it up. I put a little bit of Apis biologics in there just to give it a little bit of extra protein in it, since pollen is protein. And that's what I did. You can always, if you want, put pollen patties on during spring. That's good too. But in those types of cold snaps, you got to be ready. Just have a plan. Know ahead of time before that you know what you're going to do, just in case if this happens. You're being proactive, basically. Being proactive, just making sure that you know what you're going to do, what your plan is. And I think that's important if you're going to, keep bees like I am, or if you're, starting beekeeping, learn and work to be proactive. Nobody's going to be perfect at being proactive. Do the best you can at being proactive. Just plan ahead, know what you're going to do, and have a plan in place so you know if something happens, as in a cold snap, you know what your plan is and how you are going to execute it. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can feed during spring. During winter, we got to transition from winter to spring. In February, I was kind of still feeding some. Early February, I was still feeding a little bit of candy boards on my hive. And what I find works for me is in November and October, September, I'll feed 1 gallon sugar water, 1-to-1 sugar water. Like I do in spring, kind of build them up, build their bees up, try to get them to build up during winter. I'll feed them candy boards. That's what just works for me. I know you guys are probably, why do you feed candy boards in winter? But then you'll come out of winter, most likely you want to come out of winter with strong bees. And then what I'll do is I'll transition them from candy boards, fondant, to 1-to-1 sugar water. That's what I like to do. And a lot of you guys are probably wondering, why do you want to feed 1-to-1 sugar water? It's spring, and we have all this nectar out there for them. But a lot of times, in the early stages of spring, you'll have these days, maybe even weeks, where that flow is starting to slowly build up, so there's not enough out there for your bees. So you get me? So those early weeks where you don't have a lot of nectar, which you still have a little bit of nectar, of course, but not what you want. What you want to do is you want to start building those bees up. Then once that flow hits on very, very hard, you take that feed off, then those bees will go out and get nectar from other flowers, and you can probably have a good crop. So that's why it is important to feed in spring. I like to feed in spring And my, spring feeding method is I use 1-to-1 sugar water. So 1 part sugar, or 1 cup sugar and 1 cup water. And you know what? Nectar is even thinner than that. So, you could even do thinner syrup. So sometimes I'll do much, much more thinner syrup. Sometimes I'll have more success with that. I really like doing that. Right now, I'm about to start feeding more sugar syrup because I'm about to hit them hard because my hive is kind of low on sugar, but they have a lot of brood. So this is another thing you need to do. When you see that, if your bees are somewhat light, don't get me wrong, my bees do have some nectar in there. I see capped honey in there, maybe a little bit, but they are light. So what I'm going to do, and I'm thinking this ahead of time, this is what everybody needs to do, is I'm going to be feeding them heavy 1-to-1 sugar water just to kind of build them up a little bit more, because I want them to have some nectar, 1-to-1 sugar water in there. And remember, you don't need just nectar, but you also do need pollen coming in. So if you want to, if you don't have no pollen, you can do pollen supplement. And you guys are probably wondering, if there's nectar and you're feeding nectar, why do you want it to have pollen? Well, pollen is protein and nectar is carbohydrates. So you want to have protein, and the pollen that's coming in, we have a lot of pollen right now. So I don't think we're not in a pollen dearth. A lot of people don't have pollen dearths, but if you go into a time where you don't have any pollen, sometimes feeding pollen supplement might help you out during spring, because pollen, that protein, also helps stimulate the queen to lay, but also nectar does. So both of those combined will get your queen to start laying. You'll have good numbers in spring, and that's what I try to build up my numbers very, very good, try to stimulate that queen to lay right now. So then whenever we get in that flow, we'll have a good workforce. We'll have good young bees taking care of the larvae, the new upcoming baby bees. We'll also have a good bit of workforce by the time whenever we have more of a good nectar flow. And like I said, don't get me wrong, we have a good nectar flow right now, but we want to ensure that our bees have some good food in. Make sure we're nice and healthy. Make sure, we're doing some feeding, because it's important to feed right now. And you guys probably can relate to me. And that's, and that's really the main reason why I feed in spring, is I want to build up my hive. That really helps out too. It's not just 1-to-1 sugar water. You can feed pollen supplement too, like I mentioned earlier, like I stated. And that's very important too if you have a pollen dearth. We don't have a pollen dearth, like I said, so that's why I don't do it. But if I see a time where I don't have any pollen, sometimes it may be a good idea to try to put out some pollen supplement to give to your bees. So that will also help stimulate your queen to lay, and you'll have a healthy colony coming into maybe May. And just really depends on your weather. Now, there's a lot of different opinions on how to feed and when to feed. So I'm not going to really say when you should start feeding. I'm just going to say whenever you're starting to come out of winter. So it really depends on your, weather, like I said. So I can't really say it for you. But for me, I actually started like mid to late February, actually. We started about mid-February because we're having some very, very warm weather. And I decided I probably should switch off of that candy board and give them some 1-to-1 sugar water to help stimulate that queen to lay. And that helped me out a lot. So then here I am, March. I have 4 frames of brood. Probably even more than that right now. I actually checked yesterday. And a lot of bees, guys. A lot of bees. And I actually saw a lot of different things. I actually saw a bee that was doing a little waggle dance on the frame, so I caught that, and I'm sure that was pretty cool. And I also saw a bee hatching, a baby bee full hatch out of a cell. That was pretty cool too. So my bees are doing healthy right now, a lot of young bees, but what I need to do is I need to start feeding right now. That's what I'm going to be doing, because I kind of switched them off on this cold snap due to that cold snap. So like I said, I switched them off mid-February, but a lot of you guys probably aren't going to do that because a lot of you guys are up north. So what happens there is when you're up north in February, are you really going to switch off, sugar candy to sugar water? Probably not. But for me, I did because, we're having a very nice warm weather during that period. Like you guys probably know. If you guys remember my videos, it was unbelievably warm during that. In February, even in December, on Christmas, It was like 70 degrees on Christmas, so it was warm. We had a very, very kind of a mild winter, but we did still have a winter that would kill off a lot of our hives just because they weren't strong enough. That hive out there, I saw everything I did with it, so maybe everything I did do with that hive, I can implement, like I said, all of my other videos into next winter. Now, when you're going to be feeding one-to-one sugar water, there are a couple things you can do. Number one, if you want to, you can do a community feeder. That will also help you make sure all your bees are being fed. That also helps robbing. That's another thing I want to talk about, robbing. Watch out for robbing. Don't stimulate a robbing frenzy on one of your hives. How do you do that? Number one, maybe using entrance feeders. I really don't suggest using entrance feeders just because a lot of times they can induce the risk of robbing. Maybe you accidentally spill some. That could lead to robbing. I use 1 gallon buckets. You can use 8-ounce jars with holes punched in the lid, small ones. Or even if you're using that, be careful not to drip any on top of the inner cover, because if you do that, bees from other colonies, scout bees, robber bees will come over to that hive and let the others know that this is a hive that has a lot of honey. Let's rob it. Number 3, whenever you're talking about robbing, make sure your hives are healthy. Make sure your hives are equal. If there's one that's strong, one that's weak, what's going to happen? That strong one's going to rob out that smaller one. So make sure both your hives are on an equal level so you don't have any robbing problems in your apiary. Now, when you're feeding sugar water during spring, it's also not a bad idea to do some, or it's not really a bad idea to get some types of additives, like Honeybee Healthy, Apis Biologic. Some of these additives that you can put in sugar water, they definitely do increase the healthiness of your bees. There's certain ones that, you know, help out with different things of the body, of the organs of the bees. And there's a lot of additives that you can find on the market, like Amino Bee Booster, I think that's what it was called. I can't remember the names. I don't really remember all of them. I do know there's Apis Biologics, which I use, and Ian Stepler talks a lot about it. Rocket fuel, I guess I should call it. Or you can also use Honeybee Healthy, and so many others that I'm not going to mention on the video that you probably can find on Man Lake or some other kind of bee website, which I don't. There's a lot of bee websites that you probably can visit. Probably everybody knows Man Lake. That's one you probably can go and visit. Those are some tips if you're going to be doing some spring feeding. Watch out for robbing. That's one of my biggest tips. Watch out for robbing. You don't want to have a robbing frenzy. Most beekeepers don't. And other than that, folks, I guess we've covered everything in this video. I hope I didn't miss anything that you probably wanted me to cover. Sometimes it's hard to talk about every small aspect of a certain topic, but I think we covered everything. Spring feeding, 100% important. Something that you want to do in spring to ensure the healthiness of your colony. And there's a lot of different options that you can do. I think also doing some pollen supplement if you don't have any pollen right now. That's important too if that's something that you are looking into. I think that's not a bad idea if you are in a pollen dearth, which, like I mentioned in the video, we are not in a pollen dearth. We usually don't have one, maybe in summer, maybe, but not really. I would really appreciate if you could go on and sting the thumbs up button, smash it with however you'd like to do. That will help my videos get out to more people. Maybe this video will help you out or some other beekeeper. Go on and share this video out to any other beekeeper who you think that may find some interest in this information. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you could, after this video, feel free to watch any of my other videos and join me on Monday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We usually go live that night. And that's my nights where I'll go live for an hour-ish, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time through 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, or 9 or 8 through 9 Eastern. So make sure to join us. That'll be fun. But other than that, go on, sting the thumbs up button. We'll catch you guys on the next beekeeping video. Take care, everybody.